My brother's fiancée ambushed my husband in a mask, then accused him of assault when he defended himself. I'm 25F, and my husband is 30M. Recently, my 32-year-old brother and his fiancée, 31F, visited us for the first time since we became homeowners. My brother's fiancée is obsessed with Halloween. She's also a big Disney adult and has a very childlike side that comes out often. She gets really absorbed in her interests, sometimes to the point of going overboard. I genuinely believe what happened was one of those moments where she just took things too far and faced the consequences. However, she's taking it very personally. Our disagreement over the situation led to my husband ultimately cutting their visit short, meaning they were asked to leave. Since meeting my husband, she has repeatedly commented that he gives off a dark vibe, often comparing him to characters from books she reads. She insists these are compliments, but at this point, I'm not so sure. Her comparisons are based on his appearance, his overall energy, and the fact that he has one visible tattoo on his hand. During this visit, she mentioned that she'd love to see someone like him get scared because she just couldn't imagine him being startled or screaming. Apparently, this turned into a personal challenge for her. None of us, not even my brother, knew she had made it her mission to scare him. The whole situation blew up when she attempted to jump scare him in the garage. It was dark, and she ambushed him while wearing a full costume and mask as he returned from a run. Well, she didn't get the reaction she wanted. Instead of screaming, my husband instinctively shoved her against the wall. She hit her head and was visibly shaken. Thankfully, he quickly realized from the noise she made that she wasn't an intruder. He immediately turned on the lights, pulled off her mask, and was completely confused. Why would she attack him? My husband helped her inside, apologized, made her tea and then called me. I was out with my brother. When we got home, I asked 31F if she was okay and I said her prank was stupid to do because she could have gotten seriously hurt. I don't know if it was what I said that bothered her or if she was just waiting for her partner to come home, but she launched into crying about how my husband used an excessive amount of force knowing it was most likely her just doing a harmless prank. In short, my husband directly asked her, "Are you implying that I intentionally assaulted you?" She hesitated but ultimately said yes. His response? "Get out of my house." I tried to defuse the situation, but my husband was firm. If that's truly what she believed, she was no longer welcome to stay. She stood by her accusation. At that point, I chose to support my husband. My brother was furious with me. He felt I should have tried to fix things by convincing my husband to apologize and smooth things over for the sake of his fiancée, who was still shaken. According to him, this whole situation would have blown over if I had just gotten my husband to back down. But honestly, I think that's unfair. My brother expected me to handle everything, yet he never stepped in to talk sense into his own fiancée when it mattered. Throughout the ordeal, my husband remained calm. However, he was rightfully insulted by her accusation, and I don't blame him. Why should I have sided with my brother's fiancée over my own husband, especially when she was the one who orchestrated this, then turned around and accused him of deliberately hurting her? My brother thinks I'm being short-sighted and should consider their upcoming wedding, but in my opinion, he should be the one pushing his fiancée to apologize to my husband. A few clarifications. When I said I tried to smooth things over, I never doubted my husband or took 31F's side. I simply wanted everyone to take a step back and revisit the conversation when emotions weren't running so high, mainly her emotions. My husband, on the other hand, was composed but resolute. He made his decision and disengaged. My brother hoped I would persuade my husband otherwise, but when I didn't, they had to leave. As for the costume, I didn't get a chance to ask that night whether she bought it specifically for this prank or if it was my brother's Halloween outfit. I later learned it was part of his costume. It consisted of a full-face mask, similar to the gold and jeweled animal masks from Squid Game or something you'd see at a 1970s Rothschild masquerade party, and a long hooded cloak. People asked me to update. I will do that. Please look at my comments too in case I already answered a question you might have, but I think these two were the ones I saw pop up the most. I'm sorry I can't keep up with all the comments. I really tried. I will be showing this thread to my brother. Some of OOP's comments. Commenter, info, what did your brother say when you explained how he should have leaned into having his future wife apologize because the whole thing would have blown over if he'd help her fold? OOP, he kept sticking to her being in shock and having the right to be upset because she got hurt/slammed against the wall. So instead of having a meaningful response he kept downplaying her behavior and making excuses for her. He is saying he didn't want to invalidate her in that moment and that's why he stayed silent, and he feels that as a woman I should have spoken up to convince my husband to take full blame/try to make it up to her. I guess I'm learning a lot about my brother's relationship dynamic. Commenter, she seems inappropriately fixated on OP's husband. Why was she even pranking him to begin with? Do they normally have a jokey banter? This is just so bizarre and I don't understand her thought process. OOP, I don't understand either. My husband has no banter with her. They don't have much of a rapport. All her impressions about him are just superficial ones she's made. She doesn't even know him. But she's the type of person who believes she is really good at reading people and convinces herself she's figured them out and what kind of person they are. She has tried guessing things about him in the past and she gets them wrong because she is basing him off her assumptions. I am sure she does this with other people she meets too. Could it be racially motivated? I don't believe her behavior is racially motivated. From what I understand, she doesn't see him as a Disney villain but rather as a dark, brooding character from books and TV shows. I mentioned her love for Disney to illustrate how deeply she gets immersed in her interests, sometimes to the point where she loses perspective and fixates too much on fitting people into certain character archetypes. My husband is a calm, observant, and stoic person who isn't overly talkative. He's not shy, but because he doesn't engage in small talk as much, he might come across as a bit intimidating or hard to read. She doesn't actually know him well, yet she fills in the gaps with assumptions, believing she has a talent for reading people. The reality is, she often misjudges. She's been wrong about me too, yet she presents these assumptions as if they're facts. As I've mentioned before, she frequently makes bold guesses about my husband but tends to be way off. Regarding the term dark, I've been reading the comments and realizing what people might mean by that, but it doesn't align with who he is at all. He's not mean or brooding, just straightforward, calm, and composed. He's also not as talkative as me, my family, or even her, which might make him seem distant at first. I can understand how his quiet demeanor and stature might make him appear unapproachable from afar, but in reality, he has the warmest smile that completely changes that impression. Sorry to jump in on your comment, but now I'm genuinely curious to read some of these books she references, just to understand what exactly she sees in my husband that makes her compare him to these characters. Because honestly, I don't see it at all. 18 days later update. I received a lot of messages asking for an update, and since I've never written one before, I hope I'm doing this right. Editor's note, recap removed. After the incident, I repeatedly tried to talk to my brother, but every conversation stalled because I refused to give in to his demands. He insisted that my husband and I apologize to his fiancée, starting with me downplaying the situation so she wouldn't feel bad about her prank. At first, I hesitated to send him the Reddit post I had made. I worried it might escalate things rather than help. But his complete unwillingness to see reason became beyond frustrating. Since I obviously couldn't physically slap some sense into him for expecting me to tolerate a false assault accusation against my husband, I figured the next best thing was to let him read the overwhelming response from all of you. Taking advice from here, I decided to get ahead of the situation by informing my parents. My dad, who is rational and practical, immediately sided with my husband. His thoughts mirrored what many people here pointed out, how reckless and dangerous the prank was and the serious consequences of a false accusation. My mom, on the other hand, has always favored my brother. She initially suggested that we should at least hear her out, referring to my brother's fiancée. While her reaction infuriated me, it didn't surprise me. My dad tried to shut down her doubts, but she remained on my brother's side for a few days, until I showed them footage from my brother's Tesla, which he had tried to delete. The Sentry mode, I apologize if I'm using the term incorrectly, I don't own a Tesla, captured part of the interaction in the garage. It didn't record the jump scare itself, but it did capture the aftermath, which I think was even more important. The footage confirmed my husband's account. He used only the necessary force to immobilize her and was prepared to escalate if needed, something incredibly restrained given the circumstances, and definitely not something he owed her. Many of you speculated that she might have an unusual fixation, or even a crush, on my husband, and looking back, I'm starting to reconsider past interactions with that in mind. I also realized I had misunderstood what kind of dark books she was referencing when she compared my husband to certain characters. Thanks to comments here, I've learned that the books she mentioned actually fall under a subgenre of romance. I hadn't connected the dots before because one of the characters I remember her comparing my husband to was from a book about dragons. I really wish I had paid more attention to the names of the characters she's mentioned over time. Now I'm genuinely curious to go back and make sense of it all. We have a group chat for the wedding, which includes my brother, my parents, my brother's fiancée, and her parents. In that chat, I addressed the incident but didn't share the Tesla footage, only mentioned that it exists. Her parents didn't respond in the chat, though I know they saw the message. Later, her mom called mine. Apparently, they had no idea about the prank. It's hard to say whether they believe me or if they've taken their daughter's side after speaking with her. My brother's fiancée, and my brother, have both extended apologies to my husband, and have requested our presence at their upcoming wedding. My parents, trying to keep the peace, have encouraged us to go, saying it's the honorable thing to do. So, for the sake of family formality, we've decided to attend. However, my husband has made it clear that we'll be there out of obligation. We will be keeping a distance from them going forward. We haven't explicitly stated it, but there will be no future invitations to our home, not even for the holiday dinner we had planned before all this happened. My husband is going to minimize all future interaction with my brother's fiancée. I don't think we'll ever trust her again. I'll try to spend some one-on-one time with my brother to gauge where we stand. Our relationship feels strained, and this incident has made me realize that I lost him to her long before this happened, something I hadn't fully recognized until now. Thanks to everyone for sharing your opinions. A reporter from a news outlet reached out to me, and I remember requesting that if anyone uses my story, I would like them to pass on the following sentiment. I hope that if you share my story, you can help highlight the dangers of ambush-style pranks. These types of pranks create a threatening environment and put everyone involved at risk of serious harm or injury. They are stupid and dangerous. No one should have to feel threatened or be put in a position where their safety is compromised for the sake of a prank. If that's the setup, then it's not a prank. Actions like these will always have consequences, some of which may be irreparable, and no prank is worth the risk of someone getting hurt. Editing to add a little footnote. I understand people get curious and invested. But please consider this my final update. If necessary, I will update again in the future, but it will be unlikely and I assure you it won't be anytime soon. I got a lot of DMs requesting updates on the previous post, so I thought I'd place this disclaimer here. And another edit to fix the formatting. I wrote this post in my notes app first, which was a dodo move apparently. Sorry, I suck at this. Some of OOP's comments. Commenter, please make sure to keep a copy of that video and if possible a written statement from your future SIL. She can always backtrack and try to ruin your husband's life with a false accusation. OOP, we have a copy, smiley face. My husband pulled the footage the night the incident happened while the rest of us were still talking. I didn't mention it in an edit because he was waiting to see if my brother would be willing to show it to us himself, and I was going to send the post I made to my brother. When my brother didn't bring it forward, I revealed it. Commenter, how did you get the footage from your brother's Tesla? OOP, my husband used my brother's phone to unlock the Tesla. You just have to bring it near the car, the phone doesn't need to be unlocked or anything. He then pulled up the event and recorded a video of it on his own phone. I know you didn't ask, but I'll add this for others since I can't always keep up with all the comments. When it came to apologizing, my brother refused to admit the truth. Instead, he claimed he might have accidentally deleted the footage, saying he has a habit of regularly clearing recordings because the car captures a lot of unnecessary events, and he rarely reviews them. According to him, since my husband accessed the footage first, the car's tablet didn't notify him of the recorded event when he later turned the car on. So, he assumed there was no recording. Commenter, I think, since they both apologized, you're making the right decision by attending the wedding but keeping your distance in the future. Is the video clear enough to capture her expression after the prank went wrong? OOP, the recording started when my husband reacted to her, not before. I'm guessing it was triggered by movement? I don't own a Tesla, but when my brother stayed with us, I noticed it would record me just from walking past it. You can see the little eyeball icon. It even recorded me when I was grabbing something from my extra freezer in the garage, and I didn't have to touch the car for that to happen. When the incident happened, my husband said the Tesla's lights also flashed suddenly, which was disorienting. Since it was dark, the recording has that eerie night vision look, so both of them appear a little odd in the footage until my husband turned the lights on. When he shoved her against the wall, she still had the mask on, so you can't really see her face. When he removed the mask and turned the lights on, he was standing in front of her, so there was no dramatic Scooby-Doo unmasking moment caught on camera. Right after that, he backed off, clearly exasperated. She's seen repeatedly fixing her hair with one hand on her chest, or over her heart, I guess. I'm sure she was shocked or scared in the moment, but she later claimed he slammed her knowing who she was, which isn't true. The video confirms he shoved her before recognizing her, and just before the Tesla's lights flashed. At no point in the footage does she appear afraid of him. Edit to emphasize, the video clearly shows that once he realized who she was, he didn't touch her again. Commenter, I wondered this in the first post, and I'm wondering it again, what was her endgame? What kind of reaction did she expect? Or did she go in with a completely head empty, no thoughts approach? OP should seriously consider keeping her husband far, far away from her soon-to-be sister-in-law, at least until she shows some ability to separate fiction from reality. OOP, My take as a person who has never read much romance books is that she just wanted to see if she could be the one to scare/startle him. Like maybe she wanted to hear a girly scream escape my otherwise stoic husband who she doesn't really know anything about. Like not even enough to compare him to some fictional guys. I feel like this by itself would be viewed as an accomplishment by her, if she could claim she is the only one who has gotten such a reaction from him/brag about it. It seems juvenile. But she has bragged about similar things. Commenter, out of interest, is your husband objectively conventionally attractive? OOP, he's not a chiseled male underwear model with impossibly perfect features, but he is objectively handsome. He's very tall, has dark hair, an athletic build, and strong bone structure. That said, he doesn't have a flashy presence or seek attention. Personality-wise, I wouldn't say he fits the brooding, morally gray, or domineering type. He's more reserved, hard to read. Like I mentioned in my other post, from a distance, his quiet nature might make him seem intimidating since he's not overly chatty. But his smile is warm and instantly makes him approachable. He's not menacing, macho, controlling, or cocky. Honestly, he lacks all those toxic traits that probably create tension in those kinds of books. On her brother. That's what worries me the most, having an irreversible falling out with my brother because of her. Right now, he feels completely unreachable. Even our dad is struggling to connect with him. We're both concerned that this marriage is a mistake or that something deeper is going on with him, something making him feel like he has to go through with it, to the point that he won't even talk to us or pause to reconsider. Commenter, okay, I'm guessing she read a, slightly, spicy fantasy book with dragons, Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. The male lead, Zayden Ryerson, has a darker, intense personality. I love reading, so if anyone else has ideas, I'd love to hear them. I just can't imagine your brother siding with his fiancée after she pulled that prank on your husband. It screams obvious crush. And now he's choosing to marry her? OOP, guys, thank you so much for the detective work, it's killing me not knowing exactly what references she's made in the past. Now I suddenly want to get inside her head and figure it out. But I'm not sure if this book character is the right match. I read the description, and Zayden is described as having brown/tawny skin. My husband has dark hair and a warm skin tone, but he's definitely not brown. Maybe it's not about the looks? I laughed when I read the description that said, his features are harsh and utterly perfect, as if an artist spent their lifetime carving and sculpting them, yet alone a year on his mouth. Commenter, why does your husband feel obligated to go to the wedding? OOP, he's only going to accompany me. So I'm the obligation. He made that known to my brother. I'm going at the request of my parents/grandparents. And if I'm super honest, I'm also going because I still hope my brother will come around and open up to me and be honest with me. Because throughout this whole ordeal, he hasn't been, and it just seems to me like something is wrong that he isn't sharing, something that goes beyond this incident. So in my head I'm giving him one final opportunity. Because the way things are right now, we are headed for no contact after the wedding, and I just know it will be easier for me if I feel like I did everything and have no regrets. A bit less than 3 months later, new update. This will be my last update, guys. I did read, or at least tried to read, some of the books people recommended to get a better idea of what my husband was being compared to. Mostly, I did it for entertainment. I know some fans might not like this, but I'll be honest, these books just aren't for me. I made it through 3 books of A Court of Thorns and Roses, a Kotar, though my skimming increased with each one. I even got partway into the 4th book before my brain just couldn't take it anymore. I think my husband was supposed to be compared to Rhysand? But after reading over 3.5 books, I just don't see it. Honestly, I found both Rhysand and Fair more annoying as the series progressed, so I eventually DNF'd, did not finish. They're just not my kind of characters. If I had to pick someone who sort of resembles my husband, maybe Azriel? But that's just based on vague vibes. I also read Fourth Wing, only the 1st book, and I won't be continuing the series. I think my husband was meant to be compared to Zayden, but personality-wise, he's actually more like Liam. Those were the 2 main books I looked into. Actual update. My brother and his fiancée got married. Turns out, she was pregnant. My mom had apparently already suspected, but they officially announced the pregnancy at the wedding. The baby news has softened my parents a bit, especially my mom, who's now more focused on becoming a grandma. It hasn't changed how I feel, though. I still think marrying her is a mistake, and I'm worried about my brother. But at the same time, I don't have any strong, emotional reaction anymore. It's his life. As for my husband, he didn't have to come to the wedding, we all told him he could skip it. But he wanted to be there with me. Nothing dramatic happened at the wedding. We kept a bit of a distance, so if there was any drama, we probably missed it. However, I did find out something disturbing from someone who has spent more time around my brother's wife. Apparently, in the past, she made some disgusting comments about my husband. She once said he looks like a Lezen comics character, and while I don't want to directly quote her, she essentially implied that he's so essayable or that he would be the one doing the essay. I'm not sure if this has anything to do with the context of those types of comics, but either way, it's deeply unsettling. This was all supposedly said in a WhatsApp chat, but there's no proof since the person who told me got a new phone and didn't back up their messages. That said, I have no reason to believe she made it up. I didn't confront my brother's wife about this comment because it was said a long time ago and it just doesn't seem worth bringing up. We have just continued our no contact. Like I said. Pretty boring update. But it's truly my final one now that the wedding is over. Some of OOP's comments. Commenter, just in time, no baby showers or obligations for you. You think the baby will have some wild romantasy name? OOP, it's going to be Ryder or something and she's going to be a boy mom, with the apparel to match. Commenter, I read some Lezen comics and I would never thought of acting like her Sil. She's really FCK up. OOP, no hate to Lezen or any of the books I mentioned. She is very much the problem, not the things she's interested in. Commenter, I'd be surprised if anyone posts to disagree with your decision to go and see. If things ever go south between your brother and that woman, please establish strong ground rules should he ever reach out to reconnect. You may want to discuss those with your husband now, e.g. the woman will not be allowed on your property, even if it is to drop the kids off, you will not attend any events which she will be present at, you may even decline to have contact with his child, run, as she may use them to make new false accusations. These will suck if you and your brother do try to rebuild your relationship in the future, but it is entirely the fault of your brother and his dreadful judgment during the original incident, and that woman for being, just awful. Oop. We've talked about this in a vague, informal way before, but I really appreciate your advice. I think a more in-depth conversation is necessary, and I'll have that with my brother at some point. I've been waiting for the right time, after the wedding and their honeymoon, because I don't want him to feel like I'm making it about me or be accused of ruining the mood. It really sucks because I've always had a good relationship with my brother, but now it feels completely different. He seems so closed off and hard to reach. But what you said is exactly what I keep reminding myself, he made his choice, and I need to make mine. I'll always be there for him, but not at the expense of my own family. My dad has expressed similar feelings to him as well. Commenter. You're handling this wisely, both in prioritizing your husband and in waiting for the right time to address it, rather than reacting impulsively. That said, I'd urge you to reconsider having that conversation with your brother right now. It might push him further away. He could see it as an attack, like, hey bro, we stopped talking because you married a nightmare, and here's why I'm putting up even more boundaries. And let's be honest, he's going to tell her. She'll find a way to twist it against you. It's unfair, but so far, trusting your brother and his wife not to be terrible hasn't worked out well. Oop. Yeah, absolutely. It's something I'll address when the time feels right, or if I have to. You actually pointed out one of my biggest fears, that she'll isolate him even more. If he starts feeling like we're against him, he might shut down completely. More than anything, I want to keep our relationship intact enough that he still sees us as a safe space. If he ever opens up about what's really happening in his marriage and needs support, I want him to know we'll be here for him. Commenter. I can't believe you actually read those books. I remember being 20 and thinking they were so badly written. Oop. I got really curious. It's not a genre I usually read, but teenage me might have enjoyed them, back when anything related to sex felt taboo and I'd spend summers hauling stacks of books to my grandparents' house. To another commenter. Yeah, definitely not my thing. But I do love reading, and now I actually want to explore more romance to see if I can find something I like in the genre. My idea of romance is more along the lines of gothic novels, so my search begins. If anyone has recommendations, feel free to share. Maybe if we hate the same stuff, we'll love the same stuff? Haha, no pressure.